record. And I think that we can get started. So before we dive into our questions, I was wondering if our panelists could introduce themselves, their role, and what their organization does in the community. And I think I'm just going to do this in alphabetical order. So Abel, would you like to go first?
Yes, good afternoon. Thank you. Yeah, didn't know the group was going to be this big, but good stuff. My name is Abel. I'm working with people assisting the homeless. Currently, I'm the Associate Director of Veteran Services, working with our homeless shelter, our housing division, and our outreach division. Thank you.
Thank you, Abel. And now maybe Julie can go next.
Good afternoon. My name is Julie Jimenez. I am from LAHSA. I'm sure everyone here knows LAHSA, and if you don't, we are basically what I call the bank. We fund most homeless services throughout the county and city. I always make that simple, but what I do at LAHSA is I run a phone line that comes into LAHSA that's very similar to 211. I call it baby 211 versus big 211. But we also do work with regular 211, assisting clients, getting them matched throughout the county for different types of services. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Julie. And last but not least, we have Noelle.
Hi, everyone, and thank you, Julie and LAHSA, for funding our programs as well. My name is Noelle Stanfield. I am a licensed clinical social worker and the Senior Director of Clinical Services at Safe Place for Youth, also known as SPI. It's a homeless services organization working with transitional age youth 18 to 24. We offer many different services, case management, therapy, housing, all sorts of things. Nice to meet everybody.
Well, thank you so much to all three of you for being here, for giving us your energy and your time. And I'm just going to dive in and start asking some of these questions. So just like broad overview of homelessness in general, what are some of the common causes of homelessness? And feel free, any of you, to unmute yourselves, go first, go last. I'm just going to open it up to the floor.
I think homelessness is very complex. It's not really a one-dimensional kind of thing. It can go something from very, something as to where somebody became homeless because maybe they lost a loved one, things change in their family dynamic. They may, that could have happened and spiraled off to something that, they thought that they could control, but they couldn't. We also know a lot of folks, not a lot, but some of our folks or some of our homeless neighbors have addiction issues such as drugs, alcohol, things like that, and may lose their relationships with their families and find themselves homeless for whatever reason, may have, somehow along the way burned bridges with families, friends, things like that. So it's not like a one-shot kind of like, oh, everyone's homeless because they lost their job. No, it's very complex and very different for everyone. There's also the mental health side of it as well that we see that people see a lot. Obviously, that's what Didi Hirsch does, mental health. So you see it in that way too. And everyone can add on to if they like.
Thanks, Julie. I definitely agree with everything that Julie said. In particular for like transitional age youth, which is the population I'm working with now, previously worked with veterans. Oftentimes youth become homeless like after suffering from abuse or strained like family relationships, parental neglect, drug abuse of a family member. But we see that a lot. Once they, want to try to venture out on their own, not being able to really afford things is, is very expensive out here. And substance use within that community is also huge, as well as mental health concerns. But like Julie said, it's not a one size fits all, and it's kind of a case by case sometimes of like what actually brought someone into homelessness.
Likewise, I'm just kind of echoing what Noelle and Julie reported. Yeah, mental health, substance abuse. We see our homeless veteran population. There's many factors, right? Low income, lack of lack of family support. For our veterans, a lot, believe it or not, is their transition from the military to civilian world often leads to homelessness, and that usually comes connected with, unresolved mental health issues, going from a, super structured environment to the civilian world. Not all veterans make that transition smoothly. So, yeah, thank you guys.
Thank you so much. It sounds like all of you said, it's a very complex issue and almost case by case, depending on the person's background and social environment and everything that goes into that. So let's just say you have an unhoused individual. What are some of the common challenges that they might be facing on a day-to-day basis?
Well, the biggest thing is just getting your basic needs met. So like whether that's having some place to shower, or whether that's being able to get food, someplace to sleep, like, being in, well, homelessness itself is traumatic, but if you're on the street, because there's different levels, I would say, to homelessness. Like some people are unfortunately on the street, in encampments or in tents or different places like that. Some people may be living in their car, which also is not ideal, but maybe a bit of a protective barrier around them. Some people are couch surfing, some people, is so many different variables to it, but not being able to get your basic needs met is like the biggest challenge. And then being able to access the resources. There are a lot of resources out there, but if you don't know where to go, that can definitely be overwhelming. Not having like the proper guidance to get the resources that you need. And also from a service provider side, what I see is being able to kind of stay in contact with people to help them along sometimes is a challenge, because let's say they want to engage in therapy and they're meeting with one of our therapists because they have gone through traumatic experiences and they did experience abuse, and that's what led them to homelessness. If you're in a transient situation, it's kind of hard to remember appointments and to come in when you're supposed to. And sometimes resources are missed because you can't get in contact with people. Like I've seen various like housing opportunities pass people by because we weren't able to get a hold of them again because they may not have a phone or they don't have somewhere to charge their phone. It's just so many things.
To add on to that, we also see a lot of our homeless neighbors do not have documents, social securities, IDs, birth certificates, things that they need in order to, in some places, to be housed or to get some type of housing. They don't have those documents, and so it's hard for them to move. So we have to go backwards. We have to start from the beginning, right? Make sure they're document ready, make sure we get those. So for us in LAHSA, we have a team that does that. We have a document team, and they will make sure that IDs are sent to them. But the caveat to that is if they don't have anywhere to go, where are they going to send the mail? Because obviously DMV needs a place for you to get mail, right? So that becomes a little tricky too. So we have to find clients, okay, where can we have mail sent? Do different agencies have like mailboxes within? So those are some of the things that we encounter when we're out in the field. We have to make sure that all those things are checked off, right, in order to get somewhere. And even something so simple as to go checking into a hotel, you need an ID. So ID is really, really important. We know that right now there's a lot of talk about hotels and things going on in the county and the city. So hotels that we work with, we try, since they know us, they'll give us that little bit of leeway, but we try to get our teams to get in there. Hey, get this person an ID because they need it very quick. So document ready is really super important to top off what Noelle was talking about. So just there's so many, like I said, so many facets. It's just not cookie cutter at all.
Thank you, Julie and Noelle. I think you guys covered everything. I think the only thing that I could speak on, where folks are out there on the streets, they are lonely, they're afraid, they have anxiety, depression, no one really to talk to, so when our outreach folks get out there and engage with these folks face to face, I think it's very important for our outreach to be in the front line to deliver a message of hope, and hopefully at the time, when we could get the client's attention and direct them to that necessary service, whatever it might be. That's all I got, guys. I think you guys covered all the common challenges.
Yeah, no, from what you're all describing, it sounds like they're just in survival mode, even just basic needs like, you know, having something to eat, having a place to rest their heads at night, having a shower, and then Abel, I think it's really important to touch on that hopelessness that they might be feeling. So when we were going through the questions, the most common thing that people were curious about was resources, resources, and more resources. So starting very generically, what resources exist for people that are unhoused?
So for us at LAHSA, we actually have a script, you could say, that we first of all, people are calling into us, right? And we have to do some basic stuff, name, date, things like that, put in some basic input or basic name, you know, just simple stuff. And then from there, we try to find out, okay, what's going on? Is it domestic violence? Is it a single person? Is it a family? Is it a TAE? Is it, we have to break it down. And then once we break that down, then we break it down even more. Okay, what's going on? Do you need housing? Do you need a motel? Do you need a whatever that is? So if we continue to break it down, break it down, break it down, you have to understand when people are calling us, they're already, well, we have a really long script on our phone. So they have to go through many, many prompts to get to us. But by the time they get to us, they're pretty sometimes upset. So we have to like calm them down. Hey, what are you calling in for? How can we help you? So just kind of breaking it down is coming down, like to bringing their level down sometimes, because it's frustrating and it's hard to get the services. And when you call agencies, you have to go through many, many prompts to get to a live person. And not everybody has a live person to talk to. So for us, we just kind of bring it down. How can we help you? And then figure out what exactly it is. Then once we do that part, we have you know, different numbers that we give out. So depending on what it is that they're needing. And then if it's something that we really can't, that we're not doing right now. So right now we have a lot of people calling in for hotels. So we'll say, you know what, that's definitely a 211 thing that we'll have to call. But because we know that they're already frustrated, we will usually kind of do that warm handoff from phone to phone. Say, hey, we're going to call this, we're going to call 211. We'll be on the line with you and we'll let them talk together. And so that's what we do on our phone line.
I think in general, if we're trying to help someone calling in, 211 is like a good place to look for some things as far as like homeless resources go. But since I've been at SPI and working out of a drop-in center, I think drop-in centers are one of the best places you can send someone who is in need of services, because they can connect to outreach teams, to case managers, to like, you know, getting the basic needs met. Like at our drop-in center, they can come in and eat, they can take a shower on a certain day of the week. So being able to search out, you know, which area or spa they're located in, the like service planning area, like we're located in spa 5, and for transitional age youth, like we are the lead, and we have a drop-in center so people can come there, and you know, then they can be connected to the specific resources that they need. Because like Julie mentioned, you go through all of these questions and you have to get to the root of where they are at currently and what is it that they're seeking. So they may be looking for emergency housing, or you know, it could be a TV situation, so they're looking for, you know, connection to that as well. So I think drop-in centers are a great resource, and really great to be used to help, you know, direct someone to get the other resources that they need. But each service planning area has different like agencies located within it that you can, you know, look out for. Like in SPA 6, there's Hopics, and you know, PATH is all over. And there's I think that's a good way to find out like where they're located and where they'll be, so you can see like what other like agencies are in that area.
Anyways, I'm sorry, Megan, what was the question?
The question was what resources exist for people that are unhoused?
Got it. Okay, so speaking on veteran homelessness, I think a good starting point for a homeless veteran would be the Welcome Center at the West LA VA. That's located at 11301 Wilshire Boulevard. The Welcome Center is a drop-in or a one-stop shop. A veteran shows up there, says, I'm homeless. He has access to same-day laundry, showers, and they're able to talk to a nurse, get a little checkup, blood pressure, all the basic stuff there. Good starting point. Yes, Welcome Center, West LAVA, building 257 for any homeless veterans that you guys might encounter. Some of our veterans are transitional age youth, the younger ones as well. So yes, please point them that way. Thank you.
Noelle had actually a very good point when she said that we're broken down. I don't know if everyone knows, but the county is broken down into spas, what they call spas, and it's spas 1 through 8. And she's right, when you want to access a service, you'd have to go, depending on what spa you're in, anywhere from 1 through 8. That would be where we're going to send you for a service. So that was a really good point. I totally forgot about that. And I don't know if everyone knows that it's broken down. You can also Google the spas if you want to look at how it's broken down. The spas are, some of them are pretty big and some of them are a little bit smaller. So just to know, so if you have somebody that you're encountering, that's another thing we ask, what spa are you in? And that's like our lingo. It's like our lingo that we use every day that we think that everybody knows, but they kind of don't. So I have to go back, but very important thing to know too. So when they call in, we'll ask that specific question. Most people don't know, they'll tell us maybe street corners or street addresses, and then we can find out from there.
I'm just going to sort of move on to the next thing. So we talked about the resources in general, the spas, like really informative for me. I didn't even know that there were different zones that the resources were broken down into until I started meeting with all of you. So focusing on housing specifically, what are the different types of shelters and housing options for homeless individuals?
Well, there's many different types. There's emergency housing. So if someone is looking to get off like the streets immediately, and some shelters operate where they have to like day by day are able to get a bed there. And some, like the shelter that we have for emergency housing, they can stay up to 30 days. So it's a short-term housing option. There's transitional housing, which that's a longer-term housing option, which can be up to 2 years. It's very like service intensive with case management, trying to help like bridge the gap between like homelessness to someone becoming stable on their own. There's permanent supportive housing, which is various programs for that. Like it could be with a voucher, like with the VASH program, and that comes with case management attached to it. And it could be like a project-based resource, but that usually takes a little longer to get connected to. Emergency housing is usually like the first step, unless they're maybe couch surfing or something. Then there's rapid rehousing, which that is not a shelter per se, but it is a different type of housing program where like someone could have like, let's say they have a job, because there's a lot of people who were considered like working homeless because they have jobs, but they can't afford the rent that's in LA, which as we know is really high. So with rapid rehousing, they can, like the program can help them to get into a place and help subsidize their rent for a time period while they're either like are able to increase their income to be able to afford it on their own. And I'm sure there's something else that I'm missing, but I will let Julie and Abel go ahead.
We also, I'm sure everyone heard about PHK and PRK. We had that for a minute. So PHK came into existence when COVID hit. We opened LAHSA, the county, the city opened several different hotels across the county and the city. I think we had about almost 60 hotels, and we were housing folks then. Then PHK went away, and then we wound up having PRK, then PHK. We had PHK, which also was a temporary housing for folks. And from that, everyone, hopefully, not everyone, but in a perfect world, everyone would go from one of those units to a regular unit. That's the hope, but doesn't always happen. So we don't want to say that, it's a for sure thing. Those were also in effect. And right now we're looking at, LAHSA just put out a, what is it called when you can bid? Can't think of the name right now. But anyways, we're looking at PRK3 coming up, or PHK3 coming. So we have to get providers to run those hotels and things like that. It's definitely, I was on what I call the PRK tour for a year while that was going on, and that's a 24/7 operation. So it's almost like a shelter, but a little bit different. And folks get to stay there, get fed, things like that. So those are another to add on to the other forms that Noel mentioned in housing.
Thank you. I think you guys got it covered for the most part. As far as veteran shelters, we do have a couple options. West LA VA, we got the downtown LA VA, Sepulveda VA, Long Beach VA. They all have their different setups, but the West LA VA has a project, they call it tiny homes or something like that, on campus, and it's a short-term homeless program there. What they're trying to do there is connect them to a longer-term program, maybe like one of us, HCHV. For us, we're a 6-month program, and for HCHV, forgive me the acronym, I couldn't even tell you what it is off the top of my head right now, but pretty much what it is a grant per diem program, 6 months. A veteran could stay here up to 6 months. The main mission here is housing. Case manager is mandatory. It's a harm reduction model type program, so we're not looking at substance use, abuse, mental health. We're just looking at behavior, and as long as the veteran is not hurt himself, hurt anybody else when he gets back, we're not going to look at substance use, substance abuse, unless that was a goal he wanted to identify. There's other programs called the grant per diems. Pretty much the way they're granted are for every day that the veteran stays in the program. That's how the program is compensated. Those programs, GPDs, you don't have to be VA healthcare eligible. So veteran doesn't, that's where we direct our veterans with maybe a negative discharge that doesn't allow them to access VA services. So yeah, GPDs, HCHVs, and emergency, drop-in shelters like tiny homes at the West LA campus. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much, everyone. Yeah, Abel, I didn't even think about what would happen if a veteran was negatively discharged and how that could affect their access to services. And just going off of what Julie said about the documentation and really what all of you have shared, it seems like there's just so many barriers between people trying to get the resources that they need. So speaking of barriers, how would an unhoused person receive transportation to and from a shelter or any other type of service provider?
For us, LAHSA has one unit that's called A&E, so it's an access and engagement. It's the only unit that has boots on the ground. The rest of LAHSA is definitely other things like payments and this and that and other stuff. So that particular unit, which is about 250 what they call HET workers, they're all over the city and all over the county. So as they're out in the field making relationships with our homeless neighbors, they are able to get access from those teams to get transported to a shelter or an appointment or getting documentation. So different kind of things. But that takes also, it's relationship building, right? It's just not, hey, I'm going to call a HET team, they're going to give me, a ride. It's more than that. It's making the relationship with the client and trying to keep that relationship going by letting them know, hey, we're here to help you. And if you need that ride, give us a call if you don't have your phone. And also our HET teams go back to those locations to see those individuals, wherever it might be. So that keeps the relationship building going. And then when things like that come up, but sometimes people fall off the radar and then people will call in, hey, I really need that ride. And like, hey, where have you been for the last few months? We haven't heard from you or haven't talked to you or things like that. So it's just a lot of relationship building.
So real quick, speaking on how an unhoused person would receive transportation to and from a shelter, speaking on our shelter here at People Assisting the Homeless, specifically Cotner on the west side, I could tell you that we have a van and we have staff that will support. So say we have a new veteran that's checking into the program, he's at the VA and doesn't have transportation, we'll go out there and pick them up. Veterans that are enrolled in our program, they need, get to an appointment or something like that. As long as they coordinate in advance with their case manager, we'll communicate amongst ourselves here in the team, and someone will get them to their appointment. Also, for veterans that are 100% service connected, if they are at the VA should be able to get them transportation anywhere they need to go. If they're coming in saying I'm homeless and they're 100% service connected, they should be getting a ride. Also, veterans with mobility issues, walkers, wheelchairs, whatnot. They're homeless, they're at the VA, they need to get to a shelter. VA should be helping support that. So, yep, just wanted to put that out there. Thank you guys.
Also, outreach teams usually do have vans like Abel mentioned, so we do as well. And if someone does get connected to an outreach team and they can like bring them into a specific agency, sometimes agencies also have access to like tap cards and bus passes. I know we do. So like if we have the outreach team bring them in, if they need to come back and forth, like we can offer them like tap cards. Sometimes we even, offer Ubers if, some programs have that as well.
Okay, thank you so much. That's all really helpful to know. It seems like there's a lot of different resources that exist for getting someone from point A to point B. And then the key is developing those relationships or just letting them know that these resources are there so that they can get to them. We talked a little bit about the SPA system, and that is SPA, correct? The shorthand. So is there coordination between the different shelters and food distribution centers, or really just the spas in general?
And when you, real quick on that question, Megan, so coordination between the shelter and the food, what do you mean, like for the shelter to get food for clients in the shelter, or?
Oh, no, thank you so much for asking. So I think, let's just say there's 200 shelters in a certain area. Is there any coordination between all of them, or can someone go to 10 different shelters in a given month and none of the shelters know about that individual?
Yeah, you got the second part is right. So a lot of us are so disconnected. If we're not using LAHSA's HMIS clarity system, we have no way of telling where the veterans at unless we're connected to that system. Also, real quick with the food distribution part, out here in Spot 5, we do have the Westside Food Bank. They're awesome, and they will work with our shelters. Long story short, that's why I was asking about that. Thank you, guys.
For LAHSA, we get counts to know what beds are available and what beds are not. And we also have matching team here at LAHSA, so we can match somebody to a bed. Now there's some shelters are regular walk up, at a certain hour, and then you can get in that way. So it just depends on what spa, what shelter. There's different requirements for each one of them. And Abel is correct, they don't speak to each other. So it's us having to do the groundwork to figure out like where the available bed is and how many available beds. Luckily here, we're at LAHSA, we're able to get those numbers. So we know more or less, and we can kind of send people that way. And we also have made those relationships with those different shelters where we can call them and say, hey, is this bed open? Or hey, do you still have that bed open? Or we had a big line this morning and their beds are all gone, because what's good at 7 a.m. is not good at noon, or definitely not good at 4 o'clock. So everything is very different for us. In our unit, we start at 6:30 or 7 in the morning. So we're on the ground pretty early, and we can kind of grab some of those things very quickly. But as the day goes on, that gets less and less access.
I think Julie and Abel covered it pretty well. I will say, having access to the clarity, which is where most homeless service agencies are supposed to like document things that are going on. So like if, let's say someone came into our agency and if we're looking in clarity, we can see if they've been to other agencies, but that's only if, things are being documented appropriately. And that doesn't always happen. So sometimes, they may be receiving services at different places. But as far as like food distribution, the one Abel mentioned is the one that we work with as well for Spot 5.
All right, thank you so much. It's so interesting. As you can tell, I'm just like head bent down, taking notes, trying to remember everything that I can. And I'm sure that everyone else in the room is feeling the same way. So going back to barriers to services, it seems like many homeless individuals may have lack of access to insurance or medical insurance specifically. So what options can we offer to callers where maybe they need to be hospitalized or sent to some type of outpatient evaluation or treatment for a mental health condition, knowing that this person doesn't have health insurance?
Good.
I'll take a stab at that. So one of the things HET team does is that make sure that everyone has Medi-Cal or both Medi-Cal, Medicaid, whatever it is, depending on their age, right? So we try to make sure that that's in line. Also, that's part of our documents, getting your documents all set, your ID, social, all those things. That's part of those lists of things to do right from the get-go, because we do know that that's an issue. We also know that if you needed it, that you could go to a hospital and they can help that as well, speed that process along. There is emergency Medi-Cal, so that can definitely help you at that moment. And then getting into mental health or things like that, that's the hardest one for us, because even though there's first of all, there's not a lot of mental health places to go to, which I'm sure you all know that, and then trying to get into is another barrier. That's a huge barrier for us, and we kind of have the in, but not so much in, because there's limited services for mental health.
So real quick, with regards to veterans, if they are healthcare eligible, I always point them to the VA. If they're not VA healthcare eligible because of negative discharge, then we'll point them in Julie's direction. Also, if you have a veteran in a crisis, a good number for that veteran to call is the Veteran Crisis Line, and that's 1-800-273-8255. Veteran could call this number, or a veteran's family member, a veteran's provider, and engage with these folks. They'll be able to help you guys and point you in the right direction. 1-800-273-8255. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for that, Abel. Also, so for where I currently am, we will try to use PMRT when we can, but they often take a long time. If the person is willing to, sometimes we'll be able to find like which hospital nearby has like a mental health or like a psychiatric unit where they can do like a voluntary hospitalization. I have had people do that. Not everyone wants to do that, but that is an option. We have a DMH mental health navigator that we currently work with to connect people to FSP, and I can't think of the other acronym. There's another outpatient one. I can't think of the name. It's slipping my mind right now. But it's like Julie said, mental health resources, it's really, really hard, especially if you need it like in the moment. And like worst case scenario, which unfortunately we had to do this week, we'll have to call 911 and kind of like let them know what's happening, to have them come out and assess. That doesn't always go well. It is not our favorite thing to do, but if someone's like actively suicidal or having like severe like psychiatric symptoms, like then we will do that. But I do wish there were more resources for mental health that could help like in the moment, or that facilities that had enough support and resources for people that experience that, but there just aren't.
Yeah, and I think what all of you said speaks to what we've seen day to day on the crisis line, which is the resources that people need and the resources that people deserve often don't exist at all, or if they do, they exist in a very flawed way that's hard to navigate and very expensive, and unfortunately puts people's lives at risk. So I think we can all agree that that's an ongoing challenge. So for those of you who are posting your questions in the chat, I'm not ignoring you. Okay, I'm kind of ignoring you a little bit for now, because we are going to be revisiting those questions in just a few minutes at the end. But first, I wanted to ask some of our remaining questions. So looking at this maybe cycle of homelessness, if we can call it that, where someone is trying to get resources and they're trying to get the support that they deserve and maybe not getting it, What are the best strategies for getting someone out of homelessness, period?
I think the main point or the main thing would be to establish communications. Earlier, we talked a little bit about challenges with phones and lack of phones. Number one is communication. Does this individual, what do they need and are they going to be available? That's the main part. We're not going to be able to help someone that doesn't answer their phone or someone we can't locate, but that's the main thing I think to be able to help someone.
I would agree with Abel. It's relationship building, a lot of relationship building. And, sometimes us as whatever you want to call us, case managers, whatever, we want it more than the client. We have to meet the client where they're at, not where we want them at. So, and I fall into that many, many times, I want you to have this housing. We got you this housing. You really love this housing. You're going to, but it's not it's what I want. It's not what they want. So you really need to meet people where they're at. Some homeless do not want to be housed. And I know that's really hard for people to understand, not wanting to be housed, because you would think everybody wants a house, but that's not really true. Some people have been out in the street so long, they don't even know how to be housed. So it's like restarting from like day one to try to not fix it, but literally meet them where they're at. You can't want it more than them and vice versa. So I don't think there's a cure for that. You just have to work with them. Definitely relationship building is so monumental, right? It's the one thing that we have to do. Abel mentioned it. All of us have to do relationship building on, even on the phone, you have to relationship build. If you're standoffish or not want, or, oh, you can't do that, or because folks can hear things in your voices, how you react, maybe you snapped a little or whatever the case, that's all heard. So you have to just be respectful and meet that person right where they're at.
I'd like to echo what both Abel and Julie have said. I'd also like to mention, just in conversations with people that you are trying to help, making sure not to make any promises, because we have so many people that have been let down by systems and, and are very they don't have trust, that they can be helped or that people actually want to help them. And, that's one thing that I see, like, I've been somewhere else and they told me they could get me this and they couldn't. So making sure like not to make promises, because we never know like if the resource will still be available by the time they try to access it, or if they qualify for it, because there are different, things of that nature that could, be a hindrance to them getting the resource. I also think just in general, finding out, I know you'll have limited time with people, but for homelessness in general, trying to find out exactly what the person needs and like what have been the barriers to them being housed successfully. So, it could have been, they have mental health, and although like we operate at housing first model, of course, that's definitely a huge thing, but sometimes people may need a little more help, before they can actually achieve the goal of being housed. And that's something to consider as well.
Yeah, again, I just wanted to touch on, it sounds like what our work has in common is really that relationship building piece, really deeply listening to what someone is experiencing and not making assumptions or imposing what we think the caller should want or the individual should want, but, being open to a number of things. And I agree, Noelle, not making any promises that we won't be able to keep in the future. So pivoting a little bit away from the individual in crisis, let's just say there's a family member or a loved one, and they are trying to locate someone they care about who is missing. They said, my nephew sort of disappeared a few weeks ago. I don't know where he is. How would we support that family member in crisis?
At LAHSA, we have to refer them to the authorities. We cannot try to find people. We get that call a lot. Hey, I'm missing a niece or a nephew or sister or brother. We don't do that part, unfortunately. We have to give to the authorities and they can look up names and things like that. It's not always the answer they want to hear. We do have a system called HMIS that we do use, but even if I looked up the name or the number or whatever, I still can't give that information out to protect the client. So I could see like maybe we did have contact, or a team did have contact, but I am not able to give that. I have to protect our client. So, and not only that, how do I know that that client wants to be found? So we always have to take that in consideration too. Maybe they're just like, I got to do my own thing right now. So I don't know what that situation is. So we always just refer back to the authorities. We don't even entertain that.
Thank you, Julie. When you were talking about HMIS, I was thinking if I had access to HMIS and someone was looking for someone, I might look up their name in HMIS. Who knows? They might have that person listed on their emergency contacts. That was just right now. It came up as an idea. But other than that, yeah, we have no way really of finding, or we gotta look out for the privacy as well. Some folks don't want to be found, right? They go into the homeless system, shelters. Let's take for example, we have women and children that they don't want to be found. They don't want to be found. So long story short, that's a sticky one. I don't know if I could help family member find a homeless individual. Probably would just direct them to file a missing persons report or something along those lines.
Yeah, they both covered that. I will say, also encourage them to, like, if they, can reach out to any friends that they may know. Like sometimes people are able to find someone that way. If we are working with someone and they are listed as their emergency contact, we won't disclose that information to them, but we will let the client know that this person, reached out. So then they have the choice if they want to reach out to that person or not.
Thank you so much. It's all really informative. We get a lot of these, what we call third-party calls, where someone is calling on behalf of someone else, and we want to make sure that we're supporting them to the best of our ability as well as we would a caller. So really quickly, we have 2 more questions before we kind of dive into an open forum Q&A. But I wanted to kind of talk about some things that are happening on the macro level. So what funding is available for homelessness, and how, where, by whom is that funding distributed?
Let Julie take this one. She gives us all the money.
I wish I could hand out more money, right? So basically LAHSA does, like I said earlier, LAHSA is I call it the bank, because we do hand out the money to all of our, well, not all, but service agencies that apply for money. In terms of how you get money, you would definitely, there's a process for that, and I am not an expert on that at all. That would be a totally different call. But like I said, people, yeah, you could say apply for money, and then that money, then they go through a process, how that works with LAHSA, and then they're funded through us. And when what comes funding becomes, we have to monitor to make sure that they're following what we call an SRS, which is like a contract, and following all the things that they're saying they're going to do. And if they do, they can get refunded, or if they don't, sometimes they don't get refunded. So, and I don't know all that, there's so much funding and things out there, I couldn't even begin to hit that, but hopefully I hit that a little bit.
Yeah, also in addition to LAHSA, the VA has funding for to battle or combat homelessness. Every year, I'm sure you guys are aware of the notice of funding availability that's put out for organizations to kind of tap into and apply for different grants, whether that be shelter or rapid rehousing. But yes, there is ways to tap into federal funding as well. And I'm sure you guys keep an eye on your email. You'll see something that comes along saying NOFA. That's what it's about.
And also there's like sometimes private funding. There's different foundations I know that we've had, that will give us a certain amount of money for like some of our different programs, like our healing arts programs funded by a specific foundation, or part of it at least. And there's different grants and things. So LAHSA does do a lot of it, I will say, but then there are other ways to find it as well. Yeah.
So what I took out of that is if you need money for a homeless individual, call Julie specifically. I'll drop her personal cell number in the chat, and that is how that will be managed moving forward. Last question, are there any updates about upcoming legislation regarding homeless individuals?
There's stuff on the local level right now. I don't know about like overall bigger legislation. As you know, we have a new mayor. The new mayor is rolling out different things right now to combat. And she has a 100-day project that she's rolling out. Most of the time when the city and or the county does something, they follow each other. So one follows the other. So I see, we don't know, but like she has what is it? I just lost the name of her new program. Well, anyways, what she's doing is hoteling folks right now. So they're going around and they're hoteling people. So that's the city. When the city does something, the county usually follows, or when the county does something, the city usually follows. Usually, not always, but usually. So that's going on the local level. On the bigger level, like I said, I couldn't answer that question.
And the local level is perfect too, especially because most of us are based out of Los Angeles and our resource database is based out of Los Angeles. Okay, so if Noelle and Abel don't want to jump in, I'm just going to open the floor to asking questions. So in this space, feel free to unmute yourselves. If you sent me a question privately, feel free to read it off for the group. And Jazz, I love that you raised your hand. Would you like to go first?
Yes, thank you. First of all, I just want to say thank you to all of the speakers. That was some really useful information. A question that I have is, I know that there are a significant number of houseless folks that are LGBTQ+, and I'm wondering if y'all have any information on resources specific to that experience to provide people, as well as any additional context we might need to know or might be useful to us about LGBTQ+ houseless callers.
We do work with that community. We do have some resources, not a lot. It's becoming more plentiful as that community grows. Just like everything else, when there's an abundance, we try to figure out how we're going to make things grow. A couple of years ago, we were working with TAWICH, transitional age youth, and then those programs grew. So everything doesn't come at once, unfortunately. So we just kind of work one thing at a time. We work a lot with us at LAHSA, work a lot with, there's a community, what is it called, in Hollywood that we do a lot of referrals to. And I'm going blank, but if I remember, I'm sure it'll come to me. But we put a lot of referrals there for the community, and that, like, there's still not a lot of services, but we're slowly getting there.
Yes, it's the LGBTQ Center. We refer people there for resources as well, but also just at SPI, like, we try to be very inclusive and, making sure, like, we're asking people their pronouns and making sure that we have different services that are to support, that community. And, even our staff, we want to make sure that our staff represent the communities that we help. And unfortunately for LGBTQ+ youth, a lot experience homelessness because they aren't being accepted by, like, their families, and and it's just so many things that could cause it. But that's one of the biggest things that we see when people come in and we have conversations with them is it's family, being rejected or kicked out by their families, and that's terrible. And we try the best that we can to get them connected to resources that they need. But the LGBTQ Center in Hollywood is a great resource, so if you're not familiar with that, please get familiar with that. But like Julie said, we definitely need more resources as well.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, other questions? I invite anyone to unmute themselves or to raise their hand and I can call on you.
Would it be okay if I went next, Megan?
Of course.
I also want to thank the panel, Abel, Julie, and Noel for taking time out of their busy day to join us. The information was very helpful, guys. I appreciate it. This is from the perspective of a crisis counselor on the SPC line. If we, and I know some of my colleagues will get a call from a person who's in crisis because they're homeless and they just want to know, can they get to a shelter? Is there any sort of strategy or is there any initiative out there? You mentioned what the mayor's doing now that we could look into that maybe can help them at that point, because what they're looking for is really immediate shelter.
Yeah, definitely. I put my phone number in the chat. If it's looking for immediate assistance with the shelter, please give, or if you want to call for the client, it depends however you want to work that. Feel free to call us because we have teams on the ground that could help us get that, maybe not like that second, but definitely we can get that rolling, that ball rolling, and you can refer them to us and we can, like I said, we go through a series of questions, put them into our system, which is called HMIS, and then we could do a referral. I think it's, I put my name in, I put my number in the chat there, or for our line.
That's great news. Thank you, Julie.
You're welcome.
Also, I just want to mention, because I don't think I said it earlier, right now we have winter shelters, which I think they close in maybe March, but it provides additional beds that we normally don't have for people to get more immediate shelter. And you can, I don't have a list off the top of my head, but any resources that I do have, I'll send over to Megan and she can, send out to everybody.
I'll forward that email for the winter shelter. No, I'll forward it to Megan here. I actually have one from 4 days ago.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Definitely. No, any contacts or resources that you send over to me, I'll send to all the participants on the list, and so we can all benefit from them. Danny, who actually sent me an amazing list of questions that really shaped this event.
Hard to follow that introduction. Thanks, Megan, and thanks for all the speakers. I volunteered at different shelters, Union Station, that used to be called the Lamp, and others. And when there's it's kind of building on other questions, when there is a homeless person in need of shelter, it would be so helpful if there was a Los Angeles wide or wider kind of directory or coordination between all the different shelter providers. It seems very disconnected, very disjointed. So it's hard, other than kind of phoning a whole list of telephone numbers for different organizations. It seems it must be frustrating for you as well as for the homeless to actually know where to go to get into a shelter, unless they happen to know. For Friends Indeed is another, many different resources, but no coordination. Any scope for getting those better coordinated?
Unfortunately, the system is not perfect like any other system. We know where the flaws are. We try to make it streamlined as much as we can, but we also are inundated and we don't have enough services at the same time. So it is frustrating for us and Noel and Abel when we're trying to refer a client and you can't get a bed or you can't, it's the same thing. And I'm sure you experience the same thing. We have to call 211 as well. We have to connect as well. It's not a perfect system by any means. We wish we had more services and more service providers. We're trying our best to make those streamlined, but we know it's frustrating. We definitely, and trust me, I was on the phone with 211. It was last week for an hour just trying to get through. So imagine a client trying to call in and they're just like, forget the phone and throw it, and I get that because it's hard and they are looking for immediate services. So that's why please call us if you're running into that, or have them call us and we can kind of go through that with you or with them to kind of make it better. And I have a bunch of back end things that I use to get into different things. So just know that that's there. I'm sorry it's not better.
No, it's as it is, but is there any chance of getting, I don't know, grant funding to coordinate it? You know, we can coordinate so many other things. I can get a Uber ride to my home and poll all the nearby Uber cars. Can we, is there scope to get a grant to get a better coordination or visibility of capacity across the different private and state facilities?
I don't know that that's in the works. I really couldn't answer that question truthfully. We feel the frustration, trust me. We feel that frustration because it's the same for us. I'm lucky I could call a team, right? And get somebody transported or get this or get that because I have those means. But in terms of just letting, you know, our homeless neighbors doing that, it's tough. It's tough. We know that. And we wish it could be. I wish the big people on top who make all the decisions would listen to us little people on the bottom that deal with this on a daily basis. I have many, many things that I would like to happen, but it doesn't work like that. The big people make the decisions and they roll it down to us. And it doesn't always work. It doesn't always work. They're not listening to what it takes, or they're not on the ground and they're not experiencing it firsthand. So it makes it very difficult. And we're like, why would you do that? You know, we're us as service provider or us being on the boots on the ground, like, why would you do that? That's so stupid. You know, no one talked to us about it or what we experienced. So it does become frustrating, but these are the rules that are made.
Okay, I hear and feel the frustration. And
yeah.
The people who are in homeless accommodation obviously have many issues. Are there any initiatives or resources or support to help transition those back into better independent living?
Are you meaning like housing or?
Well, no, beyond the, I mean, ideally, people need to stand on their own 2 feet, and you know, with helping people find jobs or having preferred employment or you know, opportunities where they can transition from homelessness and poverty into having better meaning in their lives.
Right, and I think that goes all back to what I stated earlier, meeting people where they're at. Like I said, we might want something for someone, but that person needs to want that for themselves. So yeah, we know, oh, they need a job or they need a house or they need this or that person has to want those same things. So for us, we meet them right where they're at. And maybe a house is not immediate. Maybe that's a year down the road or maybe even longer. And it just depends. And that's what comes with the relationship building and all those other things.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, so I wish that we had time for everyone else's questions. Jenny, I see you. Declan, I see you. But I also know that we all have a lot of things to do today. I think I could speak for everyone that this panel was so fascinating, so helpful, so informative, and we're going to take everything that we learned and give it right back to our callers. So feel free to just express your appreciation and gratitude in the chat if you can. I loved every moment of that panel. Thank you so much. And with that, I think RZ, there was something that you wanted to say at the very end.
Yes, I just wanted to, of course, thank our panelists today for giving us your time and really having us learn from your knowledge and experience. But I also wanted to remind everybody that we have some exciting things coming up next month. Shameless plug. In February, we'll have a job fair where you'll learn about some of the open vacant positions within SPC. We'll also be having, and you'll soon learn about, a volunteer town hall where you'll have the opportunity to talk and meet with Didi Hirsch's CEO, Lynn Morris, and our VP of Crisis Care, Sherry Samolsky. And so that was something that came out of Coffee with the Crisis Line Director, so we wanted to bring it to you all. And then last, we're going to have a lunch and learn similar to this with the Department of Mental Health to talk about the alternative crisis response, meaning the work that we are doing with the Department of Mental Health within LA County for now, in us dispatching any kind of FIT team, field intervention team. So that'll include PMRT or any other kinds of mobile response teams. So look for your emails, check out teams. All of the information for these upcoming events will be coming your way. So we hope to see you guys at those as well. But thank you again to our panelists, Noelle, Julie, and Abel. We really appreciate you guys.
Thank you for having us.
Likewise, thank you guys.
Thank you so much, and thank you for everything that you do. So I'm going to have my team maybe hold back and stay. The rest of you are welcome to kind of go, you know, enjoy the rest of your days, enjoy lunch. Noelle, once again, thank you so thank you, and happy birthday to your son. And yeah, we will connect again soon, I hope.